Let's speak to someone who knows a lot about the oil and gas sector on the implication. And Nasser Alpha Mohammed is Policy Advocacy Officer at the Natural Resources Governance Institute, NRGI, and a member of PIAC. Nasser, thanks so much for your time. I'm sure you heard that clip from Egbert Fable Jr. there. Should we be more concerned, or this should solely be blamed on the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you very much, and I want to say a very good evening to all your listeners and viewers. Yes, I think that what Mr. Egbert Fable says is perfectly right, because the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting the oil industry globally. And Ghana is not in isolation, and we cannot be expecting that the COVID-19 would have no impact on our oil industry. And so, yes, in terms of the licensing regime, COVID-19 has affected even the licensing regime that we just finished with, because you would realize that the last aspect of it, which is actually going into agreement with the companies that came up as the winners of the bids, had not actually yet been completed. Of course, there was selection of those companies, but as to whether government has been able to sit with them to negotiate the terms of the agreements, it is not yet done. We are not aware of that, unless it is done surreptitiously, which I don't think happened. So yes, oil companies are affected economically in terms of the economic bargains they have agreed with government. Elsewhere, in other jurisdictions, some oil companies have even gone the extra mile of asking for force majeure claims, relying on the COVID-19 pandemic to ask government for some kind of alterations in their agreements, or at least some postponement or cancellation of certain aspects of their work commitments. And even in Ghana, you can think about even Aker Energy, which has delayed some of its own work commitments at the moment. And I believe that there are several other oil companies that may be considering force majeure claims. But in Ghana so far, we are told that they've not yet come, even though there seem to be intentions of some companies of taking advantage of the COVID-19. But as it stands now, it is impacting the industry.
Right.
And because of that impact, the ministry is unable to continue with the other processes, and as well as the next round of licensing that was originally anticipated to be to take place this year.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, we are just in the middle of the year.
Right. I was coming to that. Nas, yes, you heard Egbert Fable Jr. He didn't state when we are likely to have the licensing round. And I'm just wondering, an election year, we are almost in the fourth quarter of the year as well. Do you think that we will be able to have a licensing round at all?
I doubt that. I doubt that, because we are in the middle of the year now. And by the fourth quarter of this year, we will be solely about elections. And so unless some magic happens where in the third quarter, which we are just starting, something is able to happen. And even that, it means that the process will not be completed. If you remember the licensing round that we just finished, the process started in October 2018. That tells you that that was the time that the whole process was launched, and yet was supposed to have completed around December 2019. And as of now, we have not even completed, fully all of that processes, because we have not yet entered into any agreement with those who came up tops. And so for me, even if in the third quarter of this year, government is able to start anything, it means that we are running into 2021 for the remainder of the processes, because after the third quarter, fourth quarter is solely about elections. Nobody will have the time. Go to the Ministry of Energy. Both ministers, I think, are running for elections themselves, apart from the fact that the president is running and they will be supporting him. So you imagine that the sector leaders themselves are very busy, asking people for their votes and all that. So it will be extremely difficult, for one to think that I will be able to go through this. Even though we have a licensing round a negotiation committee which is stationed within the ministry itself. Their work is supervised by the minister and as well as the Petroleum Commission, which invariably is the regulatory arm.
Right.
Nice. So for me, I don't think it is possible to happen.
Great. So one of the issues with our licensing rounds has to do with the quality of data. Over the time, a lot of experts and the organization, the NRGI, have been very, very loud about the quality of data that we have, and the mere fact that countries like Ghana are becoming more attractive to a lot of investors, and you're shifting away from acquiring our blocks. Between now and when we'll have another licensing round, what will you want to be seen done, especially with regards to quality of data before we have another round of licensing?
Yeah, I think the quality of data issue is very important because it was one of the reasons why in the last licensing round, we could not sustain investor confidence in the entire process throughout. Because you would realize that when the expression of interest, when the pre-qualification, at the pre-qualification stage, when we asked companies to actually bid, we had as many as about 60 applications from about 16 companies. But when it comes to actual bidding process, we only had as few as about 6 or 4 thereabout. So the investor confidence, we were not able to sustain it. And the reasons that the company themselves give, with government itself collaborate, a number of issues, including the data issue, which was very important, that the data quality was bad, and yet the fiscal terms did not compensate for that risk, because we were asking for a royalty at around 12.5%, and yet for them, they feel that if you are asking for that high royalty rate against the fact that you have poor data quality and other reasons, then that did not compensate for the risk that they are going into. And so that explained why we were unable to sustain the investor confidence. So going into the next round of licensing, what we recommended, I mean, as a civil society group that monitored.
Unfortunately, Nasser, we have to end it here, but well, we'll have to visit you again for some explanation, especially with the quality of data. But